In this video, let's look at the constructed response review question, which is labeled number 2 in your packet. It says Paul is going to solve the inequality shown below. In the inequality, W represents the width of a rectangle. Okay, so W is the width, and I am given the inequality, the absolute value of 4 minus 3W is greater than or equal to 8. So remember that first you have to isolate the absolute value part. Well, it is isolated. So in order to solve this, I immediately branch this into 2, and hopefully you remember that we're going to use the word or here. One inequality is exactly as you see it. I always put that one on the right because it's positive. The other one, we do two things. We copy the part that's in the absolute value signs exactly as you see it. The other two things are you switch the direction of the sign and you make it -8. From this point, we're going to solve both inequalities. The steps for solving are going to be very much alike. So I'm going to start by undoing addition or subtraction, which means I subtract 4 from both sides, which gives me -3W is less than or equal to -12. Do the same thing on the one on the right. I subtract 4, which gives me -3W is greater than or equal to 4. Then I need to divide each side by -3. Now, when I divide by a negative, you should know that you need to reverse the direction of the symbol. So I get W is greater than or equal to 4, or on the right, W is, again, I have to switch the direction of the sign, W is less than or equal to -4/3. And I always put that negative sign up in the numerator. So when I write my answer on this line, I always like to put the smallest one on the left and the biggest one on the right. Make sure that you don't drop that word or. That is necessary. So when I go to graph my solution set, I'm going to put 0 in the middle. I have 1, 2, 3, here's 4. It's -1, -2, -3, -4. So when I go to graph -4/3, that would actually be -1.3 repeating, which would be right here in my number line. I'm going to need a closed circle, and if W is less than or equal to that, I'm going to shade all the values to the left. And then I have or, so it's not what they have in common, it's one or the other. W is greater than or equal to 4. Now this leads me to the analysis part questions. It says Paul says that W equals -3 is a reasonable solution to the inequality. Explain why Paul thinks that. Well, -3 would be right here. So that looks completely reasonable. So I say that Paul thinks, I missed a letter here, Paul thinks -3 is a solution because it is in the shaded region. Now, the one thing you don't want to do is argue with the question. If it says that he thinks it is a reasonable solution, and to explain why he thinks that, if they're telling you it's a reasonable thought process, don't argue and say that it's not. Part D then says, so why is Paul incorrect? So sometimes you have to go back and reread all parts of the question. And at the very beginning, I underlined what W represented. It said that -3, or that W was the width of a rectangle. Well, how could the width of a rectangle be negative? It's impossible. So I say that the width of a rectangle cannot be negative. Okay, if you have any further questions about this, please see me for help.